Picture this, you're stranded in a frozen wilderness surrounded by snow, literally trillions of gallons of water in every direction you look. But here's the twisted part that nobody warns you about. You're actually dying of dehydration while standing in an ocean of frozen H2O. This is what I call the Winter Dehydration Paradox, and it's one of the most dangerous traps that nature sets for unsuspecting survivors. Your thirst mechanism, that little biological alarm system that's supposed to keep you alive, isn't just being quiet in the cold. It's been completely hijacked. Your own biology has turned against you, and most people don't realize it until they're already in serious trouble with symptoms they never saw coming. Today we're going to break down the 3 sneaky ways that winter literally steals water from your body without you even noticing it happen. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why cold weather is actually more dangerous for dehydration than the scorching heat of a desert. First up, we need to talk about what I call the kidney theft, which is basically your kidneys staging a mutiny against your survival. This phenomenon is called cold-induced diuresis, which is just a fancy way of saying your body starts dumping water through urine when you get cold. Now I know what you're thinking. Why would your body possibly decide to get rid of precious water at the exact moment you need it? When you get cold, your blood vessels near the skin's surface begin to constrict, which means they squeeze down and get narrower to reduce heat loss. This process is called vasoconstriction, and while it does help keep your core temperature stable, it creates a domino effect of biological chaos elsewhere. Because all that blood that was hanging out in your extremities suddenly gets pushed back toward your body's central core and torso area. Your body's sensors detect this increased blood volume in the core and interpret it as a sign that you have way too much fluid. So, your kidneys receive what amounts to a completely false alarm signal telling them there's a dangerous fluid overload situation happening right now. In response to this fake emergency, your kidneys start purging water to lower the blood pressure even though there's no actual fluid overload at all. This is happening constantly while you're exposed to cold, and you probably won't even feel the urge to urinate more because everything's happening automatically. Here's the sketchy survival tip that can save your life. Keeping your body's core warm with proper insulation actually prevents this entire cascade from happening. When you maintain core temperature stability, you prevent the extreme vasoconstriction that triggers the false fluid overload signal in the first place significantly. Think of insulation as a lock on your internal water reserves, preventing your kidneys from unnecessarily draining them because of a false biological alarm. So your kidneys are already bleeding you dry, potentially dumping half a liter of water per day from this effect alone. But wait. Now let's move on to what I call the respiratory thief, which is even more insidious because it's completely invisible until you understand the physics. You've seen it 1,000 times. Someone breathing out in cold weather and that thick mist forming in front of their face like dragon's breath. But here's the brutal truth. Every single breath you exhale in cold air is literally bleeding moisture from your body at an accelerated rate. This is all because of something called vapor pressure deficit, which sounds complicated but is actually pretty simple when you break it down properly. Cold air is physically drier than warm air, meaning it holds way less moisture and actively wants to suck up water vapor wherever it can. When you inhale cold, dry air into your lungs, your respiratory system has to humidify it and warm it up to body temperature immediately. Your lungs add moisture from your body's water reserves to this incoming air so it doesn't damage the delicate tissues inside your respiratory system. Then when you exhale all that warmed, moisturized air hits the freezing external environment and releases that water as visible condensation or mist. Here's the kicker that most people miss. You're not just breathing, you're actively withdrawing water from your internal bank with every single respiration cycle. In extremely cold conditions, you can lose up to 2 liters of water per day just through breathing alone, which is an absolutely staggering amount. Your respiratory system becomes a constant leak, dripping precious hydration into the atmosphere with every breath you take throughout the entire day and night. The colder and drier the air gets, the worse this vapor pressure deficit becomes, meaning the air gets even thirstier for your body's moisture. Now here's your sketchy survival tip for beating the respiratory thief. A simple scarf or mask over your mouth creates what's called a moisture trap. When you breathe out through fabric, the water vapor condenses on the material, instead of escaping completely into the surrounding cold air immediately. Then when you breathe back in, you're actually rehumidifying that incoming cold air with the moisture you just captured on the previous exhalation. This creates a heat and moisture exchange system that recycles a significant portion of your breath's water before it can escape into the atmosphere. That scarf isn't just keeping your face warm. It's literally acting as a water conservation device that can cut respiratory water loss by up to 40%. So between your kidneys and your lungs, you're already hemorrhaging up to 2.5 liters of water daily, and here's the terrifying part. Now we get to the most dangerous piece of this puzzle, the brain's broken alarm, which is why winter dehydration sneaks up on people. In hot weather, your brain absolutely screams at you when you need water, creating that intense thirst sensation that's impossible to ignore completely. Your hypothalamus, which is the brain's control center for things like temperature and hydration, goes into overdrive sending thirst signals when you're getting dehydrated. But here's where things get weird and dangerous. In cold weather, that same alarm system gets muffled by up to 40% effectiveness. Studies have shown that people in cold environments feel significantly less thirsty even when they're just as dehydrated as they would be in heat. The reason for this is something called antidiuretic hormone suppression, or ADH suppression, which involves the chemical signals that tell your body to retain water. In cold conditions, your brain becomes so hyper-focused on thermoregulation, which means maintaining your core body temperature, that it deprioritizes hydration monitoring entirely. Your hypothalamus is working overtime trying to keep you from freezing to death, and in that tunnel vision focus, it essentially forgets about water conservation. The production of ADH drops, which means your kidneys aren't getting the signal to conserve water, even though you desperately need that conservation happening. This combines with the cold-induced diuresis we talked about earlier to create a perfect storm of biological water mismanagement happening inside your body. Your brain isn't telling you to drink, your kidneys are dumping water, and you're breathing out moisture with every respiration cycle simultaneously. By the time you actually feel thirsty in cold weather, you're likely already significantly dehydrated and experiencing impaired cognitive function because of it. Here's your sketchy survival tip. You absolutely cannot trust your brain's thirst signals when you're in cold environments for extended periods of time. Instead, you need to implement what I call the timed intake rule, which means drinking water on a schedule regardless of thirst. Set a timer or mental reminder to drink water every single hour, even if you don't feel like you need it at all. A good baseline is roughly 1 liter of water every 2 to 3 hours during moderate cold weather activity, adjusted up for strenuous exertion, obviously. You're basically overriding your broken biological alarm system with an external clock that your brain can't sabotage or suppress with hormonal changes. So let's bring all of this together into what I call the hydration equation, which is your survival formula for staying properly hydrated in winter. You've got 3 separate biological threats working against you simultaneously, and you need 3 separate countermeasures to neutralize each one of those threats. First component, insulation to stop the kidney theft by preventing extreme vasoconstriction and the false fluid overload signal that triggers excessive urination and water loss. Second component, moisture recycling to stop the respiratory thief by capturing the water vapor you exhale and using it to prehumidify incoming cold air. Third component, scheduled intake to override the brain's broken alarm by forcing yourself to drink on a timed schedule regardless of thirst sensation. When you combine all 3 of these strategies together, you're not just managing winter dehydration. You're completely neutralizing the winter dehydration paradox itself. You're stopping the leak at the kidneys, stopping the bleeding at the lungs, and overriding the broken alarm in your brain's monitoring systems. This is how you survive in environments where other people are literally dying of thirst while surrounded by frozen water they can't process safely. The irony of winter dehydration is that the solution isn't complicated or high-tech. It's just understanding how your biology betrays you in cold. Once you know the mechanisms, the countermeasures are almost laughably simple. Stay warm, cover your face, and drink on schedule without exception or negotiation. That's the sketchy survival science that separates people who thrive in winter environments from people who become cautionary tales about the dangers nobody warned them about.